Ramon Eickert again, out of Fremont, Ohio. Last name Eickert, 5th generation. Manufacturing's in the blood. And today what I'm going to do is go over blending shears. A lot of people hate them. They hate them. They see them, they're just like, oh, dog down. They get them, they're terrible, they don't cut. And when they finish them, they still feel terrible, or they catch. And I'm going to show you how to do them. You're going to love them. And you're going to, next time when you see them, wish you had all blending shears, no scissors. Or shears, whatever you want to call them. But so blending shears, we have one here, and this is from Janie, School Shear. And how do I test them? I use Viva. It's like wood, it's tough. And if it cuts Viva, that's awesome. And then I do a final test with either hair, rabbit hair, I don't know what this is, but I'll do a test. So right away, I can tell you this doesn't cut. It feels great, but when you cut, it cuts in the back, about 5 teeth, and there's nothing. So I don't know if you can, it cuts. Well, I'll go in the, you know, I should do all the way back, but most people use only half of it. So it cuts all the way here, but not the tip. And that tip gets most of the abuse. So what happens when somebody cuts? They go through, they do a final cut here, and they pull it and it snags, and the customers, their head's going with it. So ultimately when you get done, you want to cut, just comes out, just flies out, kind of like clippers. So boom, nice. You don't want to have to cut, open up, comb it out, cut and smooth. So this doesn't cut the tip. The thing about these, another issue is they don't cut the tip, or they catch in the back. And some people, if they put their thumb all the way through, they're heavy-handed, and they just go in, they crunch it. And all of a sudden they call and say, oh, my blenders, they're stuck. That's another issue people have, that they catch. Why do they catch? Well, it's obvious. When you have a shear, 2 solid blades, it goes back and forth, they feel great. You can do whatever you want, they're smooth. But now you have a solid blade that goes against a tooth. So what do you have? You have tooth gap, tooth gap, tooth gap, and sometimes you go tooth gap, tooth gap, tooth gap, and then you hit. Like, oh, what do? Well, you have to put a flat hone, and then you have to put a negative hone on there. I'm going through real quick, but I'm gonna go step by step what to look for. And I'll also tell you the pitfalls of too much negative hone, that you have to have your blade overlap, and why sometimes you can knock your head against the wall and they still won't cut. So the first thing I do is I take them apart, obviously. Take them apart. Oh, they're very nice, clean them, nice and clean. Clean, clean, clean. And I take a straightening bar. Key, I don't know, Bonnie, you sell bars, flat bars?
Yeah, I can bring them over, I've got them.
You sell flat bars. Flat bars are key. And I look at the solid blade, look up at the light, and what you want to see is, and for those that haven't done it, it's a little advanced. All right, so you have your flat bar, you have a little gappage light that goes all the way through, pretend there's more gappage, and then it's a nice curvature. What you don't want is when you look up at the bar and you see a curvature, and then at the last, say 1/8 inch, it's flat, there's no light. I can guarantee you it will not cut whatever you do. You need to have a gap, 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 all the way nearly to the tip. If you have an 1/8 inch flat, it's danger Will Robinson. So let me look up here. This one looks pretty good. This looks pretty good. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pass this around, and what you wanna do, put your finger on the ride, look up into light, go back and forth until you see light, and you can see that gappage. All right. So the basic concept is you want a nice curvature. You don't want an 1/8 inch totally flat.
Were you talking about the base or the tip?
The tip.
Oh, wow, that's not much at all.
Yeah, that's fine. That'll work.
I mean, it's just a tiny bit keeps it from working.
Yeah, just a tiny bit's good. And the problem is if you have too much, then you have to go and adjust the tip.
So that one's pretty good.
That one's good. Yeah, I'm not going to do anything with that one.
That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, yeah. And later, if we do one-on-one, I've got blending shears are terrible, and then we can go through and can really look at what a bad one is.
What do you do with your curved ones?
Pardon me?
What do you do with your curved ones?
Yeah, that's a different animal. Well, we're doing curved tomorrow.
Blenders and thinners, pretty much the same thing.
No, a true definition of thinner, you have teeth on both sides, and they meet, and they have a gap. So when you cut, you pull.
This would be a thinner, right?
Correct, yeah. So when you close, the teeth meet each other, and there's gappage, where a blending shear has a solid blade and then teeth.
But the hairstylists don't know that.
No, they'll call a blender a thinner blender.
So anything that they use, you pull out, if you're selling shears, you pull out anything that's got teeth on it. I used to have a video called Sharpening Shears with Teeth, and we had a girl that worked for us, and she says, how do you use your teeth to sharpen?
As this is going around, I'll fill up some time and tell you another trick that I didn't do in and it's not even a trick. We've been doing it as old as the Mississippi. To clean our stone, I don't use a Waterstone. I guess you could use a Waterstone, but I always do mine dry. Or once I clean it, I put WD-40 on there. And I also have a rotary hone, which I WD-40. Just seems not to clog it up as much. But what do I do when I need to clean it? I take a piece of granite. You go to a counter store. They tell you to go back in the bin, be careful not to cut yourself. Find a piece this big, nice and flat. I'll get 100 grit sandpaper. And then the key thing is valve grinding compound. Go any Napa auto store, valve grinding compound.
Valve?
Valve.
V-A-L-V-E?
Valve grinding compound.
It's lapping
Okay.
compound.
Correct.
Yeah, Clover.
I don't
That's
know.
another brand.
A clover. Oh,
Yeah, it's a
okay.
green.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just go to AutoZone or wherever. That's what I buy. And so now just put some of this, squirt it on there, wet, wet, wet. Wet the 100 grit sandpaper, and then just sometimes a stone like this creates its own slurry. Sometimes you have a CVN wheel, it does not. That's where the valve grinding compound comes in. And then you can use that 100 grit sandpaper forever until it falls apart, because this creates cutting. It's awesome. You go through there, it does a wonderful job. So everybody, valve grinding compound, even for your whetstones, does a great job. You know, everybody has these fangled, flattening stone. This is how you do it. Nah, you don't need that. 100 grit sandpaper, valve compound, water, piece of granite. Take that granite with you in your car or van. Very good. All right. So number one is I look at that, and then I'll take the straightening bar. And I'll look at the tooth side. Oh, this is even mine. I took Norman's bar. Oh, sorry, Norman. And I'll look up, and this isn't as important, but sometimes you see nice little spring. And this, this does not have much tension to the tip. So I'm looking at, again, this is more advanced, but it has more bow here, and then it flattens out. So I'm going to put a little bow at the tip, which I hate doing, but I'm going to be very gentle.
Would you ask the customer before you did this?
Nope. I'm a good proponent of being a good dictator. So oh gosh.
Are you just grinding the tip there?
Pardon me?
Are you just grinding the tip?
Right now, no. Right now, I'm just putting a little bow in.
Couldn't hear you.
I'm just putting a little more bend in the
Oh,
tip.
okay, by grinding it, okay.
No, I'm not grinding at all. This is just a bending
okay.
tool. And I think this is Dennis's Brooks. I just, put on a piece of wood. That way I have more leverage.
Just a warning. Just say.
Yeah, you don't always want to do that. Another thing that we can use, I've got a little metal, a die with a little curvature on there, and it's a fun thing to have. Other people use blocks of wood. Where's mine? So this one, I put here on the ground, but at work, obviously, it's made to put on a vise, a little curve. This is flat, and then I take a hammer and then pop the back. And the reason why that's important is a lot of shears, whether it's grooming shears, cheaper shears, when you look up at the bar, you'll find that this ride area is dead nuts flat. And the key is, especially when you have 6 or 7 or 8 inch shears, that you'll put them together, sharpen, and they feel good until you're at the 4th or 5th cut. All of a sudden, it drags. It's like, ugh. So you put nose grease on it, it feels better, okay, and then it drags again, it gets tight. So it gets loosened, then tightens. Why is that? Is because you have so much flatness, surface area on the ride, and that's the problem. So what do you have to do? You have to go and either by force go in the back and or you take what we do, and it's brutal, put right here and bam, pop it. Very dangerous, but that's what you do. Another trick, this is a jungle trick. If there's too much surface area, what you can do, they call it ramping, that you just go in the back on the edge here and the edge there and try to shrink it a little bit. The J, or I call it the ride. The reason I call it a ride is when a shear is open, it's loose, and as you close it, it gets tighter because it's riding on that half moon J, or we call it a ride. So I'm looking at the curvature of the bend. Some people don't get away with it. See what happens. I'm going to first reestablish the ride line. This is a dirty stone, and whenever I do on a hone, I always go down first, and I put my pressure going forward, never back, always forward, because you can have control with your fingertips of the hone line. And if it's a good, what? Oh,
Camera, I'm sorry.
So I'm always
so involved in what he was saying.
so I'm going down, but I always put my pressure forward. The first thing I do is I just work on the ride line, because if it's good set, it's going to work all the way. If not, you're going to look at it, I'll put a little more pressure at the tip. So I'm just going to do a few swipes in the back. I'm going to look at it. Oh boy, this one's a rough one. Look at this. Yeah, it's a tough one, but you know what? We're going to bully through it. Yeah. And again, we'll do some more one-on-one, and then you can really see what I'm talking about, what I'm looking at. This is brutal. So what I did is, by just putting pressure on the back, I've hit my hone here and 3/4 away up the blade. So it's hitting here in the half moon. I have not gotten the tip, so now I'm going to put a little pressure in the middle and work on the tip, because I don't want to wipe out the tip. Gentle. And this is a fun one. Again, this is a really crappy shear, but what I see here, I can see, you can't see it, but I can. I'm just going to explain. I see hone line, hone line, hone line. It stops. Then there's a little hole in the hone line, hone line, hone line. So what that means is the shear curves and then goes out.
I can see.
Can you see right?
Yeah,
You see it
definitely can
right
see
there?
right there, yeah.
Can everybody
see
see
that?
it? Good enough on the,
Hold it towards you there, right there. Keep going.
Yeah, right here, back this way.
if that little hole is really bad, and this is where it comes to setting, in order to take this hole out, you have to bring out, 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 and then going back and bring back, 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 back in. That's a different thing. This is so small, minute, I'm just gonna bully through it. I'm just gonna hone right through that hole.
So in other words, you're creating a ride line that will go all the way down.
Correct.
And it won't be pretty, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Because you can just nibble yourself to death by going back and forth just for that little bit, and that's not necessary. So now I'm through it. Wonderful. So I've honed that. Put this aside. Next step is going to put an edge on it. Now we come to the fun part. This is so easy. Same thing applies. You put in your hone. I just go back down and I put my pressure forward. just working on the back, pressure here. These two fingers are doing nothing. It's basically this finger and this finger, maybe a little in my middle, but I'm just working on the back. Look, and I can see I'm hitting, just by doing that, I'm hitting the ride line. There's nothing here and all the way forward. So it just shows that that blade has a lot of bow in the back. That's gonna be hard to see. So it's hitting everywhere but right in the back
Right,
couple
right
teeth.
here is where it's not hitting.
Correct.
Yeah, can y'all see that? Yeah, they can see it.
So what do you do if, there are two things you can do. You can either go through and try to bully my way through it and see if I can get there, but the danger is if you try to work your hone line, you may wipe out the tips and put too wide a ride line. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a negative, a ramp, on this edge. How do you turn this thing?
Do what?
I'm going to, out of the way. I'm gonna put a negative angle right here. So rather than honing this entire surface and that edge, because it's wanting to skip it, I want to put a negative angle here to make the hone line up more with the teeth.
Go sloping towards the end or away?
I'm gonna go a negative away. So that's not my machine, I'm sorry. Oh my God, I keep going there.
Backwards from yours.
Yeah. Oh no, you're right. Hold on. Oh my gosh.
What are you trying to do? Which direction do you want to
It's
go?
amateur hour, sorry. There you go. Just want to go. All right, so I did a little ramp right there. And I'm gonna hone it.
Were you on the teeth or that back?
No, just on the back.
Okay.
But even if I hit the teeth a little bit, it's not gonna matter because you don't cut, you're gonna be ramping that anyway. So I'm doing the hone, very nice. I got it. And this is really important because this happens to have just flat teeth, but sometimes you have those teeth, they call them those dragon teeth. Those are a pain in the butt because you can't edge them because it doesn't look good. So what do you need to do? You have to make sure that that inside hone is nice and sharp. Just absolutely beautiful because the inside is what cuts. And there's some different cheater methods you can do if they're dragon teeth, which I can talk about later. So once I have a nice hone set up, you can see it, you can feel the edge, that burr is caught up. Now you want to put the negative, the ramp on there. Is there a secret to it? No. All you're doing is you're going at an angle back and then
Oh, wait a
just
minute.
backwards.
Do that again.
I'm just taking it and just putting a little angle up and just running it back. And that now, rather than super flat, you have a little angle. Now the
You're
problem,
actually lifting up.
I'm lifting the back end
Yeah,
as if you put like a piece of plastic, so it's up.
just a little bit.
Yeah, and just putting a negative angle on there and then back. Now here's the problem. If you have your negative angle and you can look at it and you can see it, if it is too wide, it's not gonna cut. So that's why the next step, you put an edge on there because that'll bring that negative angle down. If it's too wide, it's not gonna cut. All right, what am I doing here? Wrong way, all right. Now these are Velcro pads. And generally I work just pads on steel.
PSA.
Yeah, PSA, I don't put hard rubber. I just go bare bones. I like to have an exact edge, but this will work. I don't go super fast. At least doing shears, I don't think it's your friend. What's the angle on here? Well, I'm doing freehand, so I don't know what the angle is, but I'm just gonna put an edge on here.
But you wouldn't be able to do this if there was a V in the teeth, right?
No.
You're only able to do it because
I'm doing it because it's flat, yeah. If there were a V in the teeth, what I would do is I would just hone the heck out of it. And then I would take a cheater stick. Let's pretend, let me use my cheater stick. I got a cheater stick right here. And I would just go at an angle and go across it just to create that negative hone. All right, so I edged it, I put it across, and we'll see what happens. That should be good. Let me put an edge on here. Edge, I can feel the burr. With this solid blade, I'm going to re-hone it. I'm going back because I kick the burr up, get the burr away. Put a hone on there again, very nice. I reestablished the hone, I can feel burr. Let's get rid of the burr. And I'm going very fast, but later on we'll do a little one-on-one, and you guys can do it yourself, and I can show you close at hand. All right. This is a felt pad.
Felt pad.
Felt. Some people use leather. Some people use felt. Some people use what's called a suba pad, which is something similar to this.
You're going to tell me where to get those. Remember?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I took the burr off, and you can feel it. There's no burr right here, and it feels very nice. So now we have here. We honed it. We did negative. We put an edge on there. The next step is, because we edged it, you can feel burr. I'm taking a cheater stick and just lightly at an angle, go across it. No rhyme or reason.
Right?
On the inside, correct. On the inside, just angle. And I'm just kicking the burr off on the other side. Bonnie sells nice components, washers. Washers are key, because if you get a good washer, it can make a bad shear run good, a good shear run great, and a great shear run just absolutely amazing. A bad washer is kind of flimsy and squishy. If it gets cold, it changes the run. If it gets hot, it gets soft, and everything you've done is good. A great washer is made out of mylar. So I can put one of my washers in here. Okay. And these washers we use here, we sent Shears up to the International Space Station back in the day, about a dozen of them, and we used mylar washers. And when I was dealing with NASA, they wanted all the specs. I'm like, what is this, rocket science? And I started laughing because they are rocket scientists. And I'm like, you know, every shear's gonna be a little different. They're handmade. You're not gonna have exact specs. We also made industrial shears for them. And the issue they were having was when they were making spacesuits, and they're cutting shears and they were chrome plated or nickel plated. When they cut it, some of the little specks, metal flakes would come off and it would contaminate the material. So we had to put what they call it hard chrome on there, which is also kind of cool. But what do we have here?
I think it was one of our sharpeners that used to do the sharpen the scissors one.
What's that for?
For the NASA one.
And this is putting it together. So now I have it together. I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to spread them out and just slightly open close it. Boy, it feels super smooth. Oh, too tight. God, this clinker plate's terrible. Open close it. Now what I did though, the trick, what's very important, two things, is when you look at the solid blade and you look at the tooth, you have to make sure that that solid blade at the tip goes beyond that hone line. Not just the ramp, but the hone line itself. If it does not, and it goes partial, guaranteed it's not gonna cut. So you're either gonna have to bend the handles or take a little from the bumper. You have to make sure that this solid blade goes beyond that hone line. If it doesn't, sometimes you can't help it because the hone line's been washed away. Then I call it the twist of death. Then what you have to do is create a rake angle, and that is where you take your block and you put a little not just a bend, but a twist. So you're twisting that edge in. But I'm not gonna do that yet because we're gonna see if it cuts without it. Next thing that's important, because you put that negative hone back in there, you just want to slightly go across and bring that hone back. You can feel it. Oh, you can feel it, you can cut it. And now you want to pray to the gods, like, will this cut? And if it doesn't, then we'll see why. And this is a really tough test. Really tough test. Let's see what happens. If we're lucky it cuts. If not, it'll be just a good education of what to do next. I'm cutting. Oh my gosh, look at this. It cuts all the way to the very end. Boom, not just once, but twice. It's awesome. It feels awesome. Too bad you didn't feel it prior. And even though it cuts this, it's still not the final test. I'd love to take either rabbit fur, fake, natural, Elmo fur. I don't know what creature this is.
Somebody gave that to me. I don't know where it came from.
This is super.
I came to
So
the
then-
office one day, it was sitting there.
Yeah, so then you want to cut. When you cut, boom, and oh my gosh, like butter. Now, Jane, you can contest how when we first did it, it didn't cut at all. And not only does it cut, the final thing, even though it cuts beautifully and I love it, I'm very soft when cutting. I just use my tips. Again, some people may shove their knuckle in there and you think it's perfect, but you have to be very careful. And at the very end, because you don't really cutting at the very end, you're cutting in the middle and the front. Take your little cheater stick and just go at an extreme angle and just get it and be aggressive with it so that if somebody does jam their finger in there, that doesn't catch. And this, I don't care how you do it, it's not gonna catch. So you can open, close this, and you may think this feels too good to be true, but obviously, look at the test, just boom. And this cuts as if it were a new shear. Open, close that.
Because it literally wouldn't cut anything.
No, it didn't cut anything. It was dead. So just to rehash, when a blender doesn't cut, it doesn't cut at the tip or it catches in the back. And the important part is the negative ramp. But if you put too much negative ramp, it's not danger. Well, Robinson, all you're doing is then you put an edge on here, which thins out the edge. If it still is too wide, then what I would do is go and just hone it flat again to create the flat hone and make it thinner. If the ramp is too wide, it's not going to cut. The final thing is you want to make sure that the solid edge goes beyond the hone line so it cuts. If it doesn't, and you have no other choice, and it still doesn't cut the tip, you have to take it and put a little twist at the tip. But that's always worst case scenario. Sometimes, whether it's a shear or a blender, you can do what you want, and that son of a gun does not cut at the tip. And why is that? It's because the grind is terrible. Meaning, when you look at a shear at the light, you can see how it angles from the back towards the tip. A lot of cheaper shears, they go straight, and the only difference is when they ground the inside, they probably ground it flat, but when you have a cup wheel, you always want to grind it up because that gives you the twist. And if there's no natural twist in there, then you got to go old school and create that twist at the tip.